Hello and welcome to Mirrorlost Mondays number 5. It is not Monday. It is actually Friday where I am, probably Thursday where my good friend Chepe here is.
Soon to be Friday.
Soon to be Friday. So we're a little bit late, but unfortunately he was unable to make it earlier in the week, and that is okay, we understand. So we're doing it today, so welcome. And today we're going to be discussing what someone else who isn't the creator of Mirrorlost might ask, some questions that that my good friend here might have. He knows the system a little bit and the setting a little bit, but I've asked him to put me on the spot a little bit, so hopefully we can be a little bit more interesting to those of you that are watching and have come along. So thank you if you're watching, and I'll let Chepe introduce himself and his channel. I definitely recommend visiting it, but he can tell you where that is, and then we'll get started.
Channel is called Fauntrodden, F-A-U-N-T-R-O-D-D-E-N, one word. I have many different kinds of games on there, although as of late, probably the only things I've had on there is D&D and Edragor, which I did for BrigadeCon, which is a Native American fantasy game based off the Fate Core system. I recently put out a video about how to make well-rounded characters, which was like an hour-long rant. If you would like to sit through it, 53 people did. Maybe, maybe not. You know, it's a channel that goes through phases, and it's just my personal thing. And Matt has been on it on more than one occasion for both the Month of Surrealism and also the Fall of House Odenwald campaign, that mini campaign that felt like a full campaign and ended with a bang. Besides that, I've known Matt for a little while. We've met online through the channels, and I've been on his channel before in a game, just for total discretion. I have seen his game, and some of these questions I've asked kind of before, and some of these questions he may have never heard before, so hopefully he will be put on the spot and be made honest, because that's what he wanted me to do, so that's what I'm going to try to do for him. Yeah. So the first question, to put you on the spot, which is probably going to be, it's either going to be the easiest or hardest for you, depending on how much you've prepared for it. And knowing your personality, this is typically probably the hardest question. I need you to summarize Mirrorlost, the game, both the setting and the game, in one sentence that's less than 10 words. How would you summarize Mirrorlost?
Does it have to be a sentence that makes sense, or can I go for like words that just...
It needs to make sense.
Yes, and that's the difficult part in 10 words.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, so dimensional repercussions. Okay, so I'm going to formulate it here so that we can make some sense. Tactics, tactical, yeah, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. I'm nearly there.
Good. You handled it a lot better than some of the Rowan Gate conundrums.
Oh, the Rowan Gate conundrums. What am I going to do? And I'll use those words. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so what I've come up with is a tactical fantasy RPG. I'm classifying RPG as one word here.
All right.
Tactical fantasy RPG with dimensional repercussions and world development.
Okay. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Mirrorlost is a tactical RPG that focuses primarily on dimensional repercussions and world development, which is pretty accurate. Pretty accurate. It is, and it is a fantasy RPG. In its core, it is indeed quite a fantasy RPG. In terms of the main setting, Galferia, right? If you were to name 2 or 3 main inspirations, specific works of fiction or popular culture that people could identify with,
sure,
what would you mix together to kind of give a semblance of what Galferia is like? So if you had to mix, say, like Skyrim with something or something to that effect.
Sure. So Lord of the Rings or anything Tolkien-esque. So let's take that. I also would include, I'm not sure how many people will be familiar with this, but I'm going to use it anyway because it's one of my biggest inspirations, and that is the Dragon Prince and Dragon Star trilogies by Melanie Rawn. It's a book series, 2 trilogies. She's written a bunch of other stuff, but her work is huge in inspiration for this. So that would be one of them. Another one that's probably more recent and more familiar with people would be Game of Thrones. So Tolkien, Game of Thrones. Do you want another third one that more people might know? Okay. So trying to think of something that has a little bit of what is that? Perhaps there was a dinosaur TV show where they could go through, even Stargate might work for that. They visit different cultures.
Stargate.
Yeah. Little less travel, but the idea of Stargate, different worlds, different cultures, different time frames, it definitely rings true for this.
That's a cool way of putting it. So if you didn't understand the phrase, which is the tactical RPG based on everything, it's a mechanically deep combat system, right? But it is a role-playing game, so there is plenty of story involved that focuses on a world that's like fantasy Stargate.
Yeah, a little bit of Game of Thrones.
With some Game of Thrones and, of course, Tolkien thrown in. Because, you know, everything has Tolkien in it.
Well, as far as time frame, like you're looking in a sort of Tolkien-esque world where there's not gunpowder or anything like that. It's you know, your medieval-ish stuff without gunpowder. So Tolkien, the time frame and I guess the largeness of the world and lore, you can go there. The Stargate is all about different cultures and different times, and Game of Thrones obviously it's a very human-based thing. It's humans that have been mutated, but it's humans all the same. So we're not in an elf, dwarf, high fantasy setting. It's more gritty, mutated humans. Intrigue, politics, all that.
Which that's actually a good thing. I wasn't thinking of the human centricity as being the reason why you chose Game of Thrones. Normally when I think of it, I think of something like Guild Wars 1, just because I love that game. But yeah, those that does fit. It's a human-only fantasy world, but where humans are being slowly tainted due to interdimensional stuff
Stuff.
that is causing a lot of stuff to happen, and characters are in the middle of that.
Yes.
You can almost say, would it be fair to say that pretty much every character is a mythic hero who's caught between multiple worlds in a multiverse?
It's a little more gritty in that while you're probably a step above a commoner, it is you're finding your feet. So mythic hero?
No. It's more of the Witcher level, I'm guessing, of power then.
Okay. Yes, you're finding your feet. Yeah, Witcher is cool. I like that. And the fact that there are these crazy creatures out there, that the way that they're developed is a little different to other systems. I don't know whether I need to go into that now, but certainly there are crazy creatures out there. So certainly there are things to fight, and these people are just discovering their power. They're discovering the need for a hero or for heroes in their time frame. They're discovering,
almost like Dragon Age in that sense.
Yeah, that they have something to offer, and so they're embarking on that journey pretty much from word go all the way through. You can obviously start higher level, but the concept should be a little bit more gritty than okay. I'm already a hero and I already can do all of this awesome stuff.
So I already know the answer to this question, but this is a question that people are going to ask you a million times as you try to put this out there. What's the core mechanic? When you want to do a thing, what do you do?
Okay, so this is a dice game, and the dice that I use are 2d10s, or what's called a d100. And you have a bunch of characteristics that you test yourself against. Your characteristics are set at a certain level, and the level that they're set at is a percentage that is equal to how the percentage that you're likely to succeed. So if something's at 45, then you have a 45% chance to succeed. Obviously, that can be modified with things that, you know, in the environment and special moves that you can do to boost your score for the purpose of a specific task. But basically, you're rolling beneath your number to succeed on a thing. And the reason why you're rolling beneath is because your number is a percentage chance of success.
So it's basically you got a characteristic, so you got a stat like strength. You want to lift a boulder, you roll under the stat.
Yes. I know a lot of people out there find rolling under systems very confusing. They like visceral, if I roll above X, then I succeed. But in this, your number dictates how likely it is that you succeed. And then rolling under means that indeed you have succeeded.
All right, to expand a little bit, this is definitely a question that some people will ask subconsciously. Not everyone will, because they're not as big of a critic or as picky as I am when it comes to everything, or as pedantic. But this is something I ask whenever I look at a game, and it's something that I know other people do. And what mechanically specifically, makes your game different from other games? Like, what does it have to offer that other games don't?
Very good question. And to be honest, this could be a flawed answer. And the reason why it could be flawed is I haven't seen a huge amount of D100 systems in my time. I've seen a couple. So I might hit on something that's already being used elsewhere. But something that I believe sets this a little bit apart is the amount of modifiers that you can choose from when performing an action, especially in combat. So in combat, there are a bunch of different things that you can decide to do to modify your numbers to give you a better degree of success, whether it be something that you want to be defensive with or offensive with. You can do either thing. It's very tactical in that sense. And I would say that the tactics is what sets this game apart from perhaps a lot of other games out there. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that other games are not tactical, because they certainly are, but in looking at and in writing Mirrorlost, it became clear to me pretty early on that it was going to be focused in that area. That was going to be one of the huge things. So mechanically, I think that was your question, mechanically what sets it apart, I would say the tactical possibilities is what sets it apart.
What was that mechanic called? Were they called maneuvers? What were they called?
So, yep, there are, this is a many-layered system, I guess. So there are maneuvers that you can generate out from your scores, from your abilities. So if you're a strength fighter, you can have specific maneuvers that do specific things. Things like, you know, a barbarian shout from, like, say, Diablo or something like that to boost your party. So that sort of, you know, rallying cry is something that a strength character could do, or like a leadership charisma-based character could do. So those things are all things that are possible in a maneuver sense, and all of those things modify yourself and other people's abilities. So everything gets dynamically changed all the time.
What I'm asking is, there was a thing, right? When a person casts a spell, they can do any number of things with the spell by powering it up or less through that mechanic, and people can do the same thing with attacks, but I can't remember what it was called.
So those are called combat actions, I believe.
Just yes, just combat actions. That's right.
Yeah, because maneuvers are specific; they're named and everything. Yeah.
So the interesting thing, what I think really adds to your system in a lot of ways, and I've told you this before, is for your tactics. Most games have a hard time balancing some actions over the other, and because you have a percentile system, you do that by just adding penalties to the dice, which means a person can effectively do, you know, whereas other games you might have like 4 or 5 actions that you can choose from in a given situation. You have 8 to 16 actions that you can choose within a given situation, all of them specific, and they're all balanced in the sense that it's going to be harder to do the more rewarding thing because there's a dice penalty to it, because it just lowers your percentile chance.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting. Not a lot of things do that, really. GURPS does, but not nearly to the level you do in the game. So another question that I would like to ask you, right?
Yep.
Because you've done playtesting, correct?
Yes.
Playtesting.
Yes.
All right. I want you to tell me a story from the playtest of what's your favorite character moment that you've seen that's happened in playtesting from another player.
All right, I put some characters inside of, I guess, a fort, some sort of stronghold, and they had to get out of the stronghold before they went on their adventure. Now, so that they were kind of imprisoned. Now, when they got to the front gates after going through the lower level, which didn't take very long, admittedly, when they got to the gates, the winch that they needed to use to get the gate up was in pieces, or was jammed. It wasn't working. And yeah, the lever part of the winch, it was lying on the ground beside the wheel. And something that I remember clearly, because I just was not expecting it, was that one of my players decided he had lightning powers. And he said, can I take this metal rod and weld it back to the winch so that we can actually use it again? And obviously I let him try. So he rolled to see whether he would succeed, and he actually succeeded to use lightning to sort of melt the metals together, and managed to then combine their strength to wind up the winch. And that was how they managed to get out. I was expecting them to like climb over the top or something, but no, he wanted to weld it together. So there you go.
What's been your favorite character in the playtest?
There was a sneaky female character that one of my friends played that was really fun. I don't remember her name or a lot of what she did, but she had a lot of interactions and decided to really play out how conniving, I guess, the character was. She was really gutsy in trying to take some things under NPCs' noses, and not very small things either. She actually stole a vase from someone's house, and it was a big vase, and she managed to do some stuff with it. But it wasn't what she did as much as how she went about it and the interactions that she had with the non-player characters, to get herself in a position where she could actually manage to steal this thing under these characters' noses. So how she went about it, planning it out, and setting up distractions and stuff in the town. It was really, really interesting. So,
all right. What I'd like to ask you then is, some people who might be more role-playing inclined or not, some people separate mechanics from role-playing.
mm-hmm.
Do you say your game, what does your game do, maybe in character creation or in some dynamic that happens, or maybe the mechanics just stay out of the way? In what way does your game encourage or help or add to role-playing?
All right. It encourages role-playing because in this system, there isn't one form of XP, experience points. There isn't one form. There are many forms of experience points. When a player does something in combat that is not written on their sheet, but uses something that is on their sheet, uses a weapon in a different way, uses an element of that they have in magic, so a magic power in a way that isn't written down. When they come up with something, for example, the welding thing that I mentioned before, they actually get a specific type of experience points for that, and that tree of experience actually unlocks more slots for them to use. So this game, when you're casting spells, you've got a certain number of slots, which is how many things you can memorize, because you learn. So how many things you can actually memorize to use in a specific day. You can use them as many times as you like, but there's only a certain amount that you can memorize. So as you go up this tree of doing things outside of your memory, you get more things that you can memorize. So it's a rewarding thing for that. Outside of combat, obviously there is also a role-playing experience when people play their characters the way that they're designed. So characters should have at least large personalities where they have faults, they have things that they find interesting in the world, they have goals of their own, they might, so it's about playing to those things, playing to your strengths, playing to your weaknesses. And when players do that, when players decide to do something that is what's written down for their character's personality and actually develop it, make choices, change the way that their character sees things, they get a specific type of experience for that as well. So there's actual rewards, I guess, for that. During character creation, there are, like I said, a bunch of characteristics so that you can make character however you kind of want, with whatever skills you think that they should have, whatever weaknesses you think that they should have, and hopefully the idea is that that in itself, character creation should be almost bringing this character to life. It's about, I've got this concept, how do I make that happen? And the game tries to encourage lenience, I suppose, in allowing people to do kind of what they want within reason.
Okay. Can you, so from a GMing side, right? Because GMs are the people who typically buy games, right? Sorry if this is putting you too much on the spot a little bit. But something that a lot of people tend, like, it's community content that eventually kind of figures this out for other people, right? But certain games, just by the nature of what they are, generally has a certain pattern of how you GM it, right?
Yeah.
For example, when you create a town in Numenera, right? It's pretty easy, right? In Numenera, whenever you GM, it's a certain style of GMing because it just lends itself to that nature. You make a town, you add something that's from one of the previous civilizations you could think of in your head, like something that's ancient and not understood, and then the entire town is built around that weird thing. And the weird thing becomes the gimmick of the town, and then lo and behold, you have a society around it, and then the game comes around figuring out what the weird thing is and how the weird thing influences all the other weird things that are in all of everyone else's weird things, because all the towns are made of weird things. In a similar fashion, right? If you're running a horror game, it typically starts out, okay, what's going wrong and what's the thing that's trying to kill everyone? With Galferia, particularly with the fantasy world, if you were to advise a GM with just how the world is set up, and they wanted to build a town in your world, is there a simple step process that is unique to Galfaria as to how that happens?
The short answer is no, not yet. And I'm not even sure whether there will be. How cities or towns or hamlets are created hasn't been written down. Like, I haven't got a step-by-step process for that. I have my own way of doing that, so creating the lore isn't difficult for me. What I will say is this game comes packaged ready for GMs and players to create content of their own for the history of the world. So if a GM decided, I want to do stuff at X time, which is like, I don't know, 800 AD or whatever. Let's give a real world example. 800 AD, that's when it is. You can go to that time, create something, and the idea is that almost that becomes canon for your world. Mirrorlost is multi-dimensional, so anything that someone creates is possible within that multi-dimension. Do I have a system in place? No.
I wasn't necessarily asking for a system for it, but rather like, do you sense a reoccurring pattern with the type of game that comes out of it?
I guess the pattern is there should, in Mirrorlost especially, always be something strange, you used this word, that is happening in a local area. And that usually would come from a mirror crack. A mirror crack is this rift between dimensions that brings other dimensional influences, creatures, things into the world and starts to make it weird and takes what's in this world and sucks it in, or sucks it out, if you like. So a whole, like the majority of big events, other than wars and politics and things in the history of Mirrorlost, come from these mirror cracks nearby either a large civilization or even a small isolated one. There's a really interesting story, for example, in one that I'm going to be running in a playtest. Part of the history time is that this specific little town that is out of the way of everything, they've never seen a taint, like someone morphed. They've never seen weird before. They're a human town just on the outskirts, and all of a sudden nearby a mirror crack happens and taint starts to happen, morphs start to happen. They start to see trees come to life, or vines come to life, or their children start having, facial growths, or, weird things, and they have to learn to adapt to that. And so I guess the pattern would be something weird is going on nearby. What are we going to do? How are we going to approach it? Obviously, this crack between dimensions, it's not something that we can just put a stone cover over and forget about. So it's not something that we can just wish away. So how do we deal with the repercussions? How do we deal with people shouting witchcraft? How do we, what happens? So it's almost a reactionary thing to this mirror crack. In other more civilized areas, they might be very well used to these things. So they might just go, you know what, we don't care, but then something is created from that, a bigger, badder, meaner monster, or even a whole town of people that are, have their compassion sucked out of them. Who knows? And they become marauders and start, and so you have to track down where that came from. So I guess the pattern is generally going to be something weird's going down. Let's discover what it is, how we react, and deal with the fallout. Does that answer the question?
It does. Are you okay? Is it hot seat enough for you yet?
Well, for one, it's hot here. The sun is beaming down. You might actually see me sweating on the stream. I'm sorry about that. That's disgusting, but yes. Good questions. Like, this is unscripted, so we're just chatting and I'm figuring out stuff. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question and gives enough for people to get their teeth into. Sure.
Then my last question would be, this is a lead-up question to the actual question, so I'm just gonna dimensional travel, right, and going into multiverse is a big deal in Mirrorlost, correct? Because Galferia isn't really the setting; it's the starting setting to the whole multiverse.
Yeah.
So my question is, how does the system, the world, like, how big a part is the actual travel to the mechanics, or is it merely a story thing, which is not a bad thing? I'm just asking, how is it handled?
Yeah. Majority, it's a story thing. There is very little actual travel, and the reason is that that's actually part of the story. The people of Galferia, especially, not these other dimensions, but in Galferia especially, they don't know what the Mirrorcracks actually are. It's us as, I guess, the gods looking down that know about that. It's the people that are creating it, the people that are creating their own characters. They know that there's a multi-dimensional thing going down, but the characters, the people that are in the world, they do not understand this. They do not know what's going on. There is an isolated organization that is currently studying the Mirrorcracks, and occasionally one of their members will travel. However, the majority of it is someone has arrived from somewhere else, or something has arrived from somewhere else. That's a story element. We don't know how they got here, but they came from that thing over there that's glowing. What do we do? So while travel is possible, it's certainly not something that Galferia is equipped for. And it's not something that they understand. So majority, it's a story thing. It's the chance to introduce all of this weirdness into the world, and introduce something that is larger than just Galferia. And the idea behind that is that in the future, either myself or other people can link Mirrorlost as a system into a planet or a world of their own creation, and have the events from either Galferia or somewhere else actually be not exactly mirrored, but have the ripple effect, where there's a war over here, so there's something that happens in this other dimension that someone else creates, or that I create, or that you create. And so the possibilities for future developments gets multiplied by tons. And just for myself, I want to create a steampunk reality with clockwork machines and gears turning and the whole world created on steam. And clockwork. as well as a bunch of other things that may or may not happen down the track. And the idea is that people are able to connect in. And I guess as probably an unwelcome addition to that, I will say that all of the combat and maneuvers and elements, you can condense those down and take a package of them. Let's say you wanted to do something in, say, the Last Airbender kind of universe where there's only fire, earth, air, water, steel, and you wanted to just use those 5 or 4 primary with maybe some others that are possible later on, but you just wanted to take those things and use those things from the Mirrorlost system and just roll dice as you would. You can absolutely do that. So you can go into any sort of reality, because the idea is different dimensions have different possibilities. So the makeup is designed so it's possible.
All right, and I'll leave that as the last question. So in short, it is a fantasy role-playing game that takes place in a medieval fantasy world in a multiverse that leaks into it and affects the world on a constant basis. It is a percentile system with a crap ton of tactical options, a very robust customization, character creation, which you've walked me through, and I've seen that it is quite thorough in places. And something that lends itself to creative play at the cost of lots of dice roll penalties. It's a roll under system, and it's kind of like Fantasy Stargate with leaks from other dimensions into everything, and it's supposed to be built in a way that you could plug most things that you can imagine into other multiverses as you wished.
Yeah. Okay. In closing, I will also say the enemies that are in Mirrorlost, and especially in Galferia, are lore-wise mutated flora and fauna. And something that I've, I guess, tried to do is give DMs the chance to bring in any creature that they can think of in sort of in step form. So you could bring in a dragon or a centaur. It might not necessarily, like, it doesn't come as D&D might with a centaur stat block or a dragon stat block. Instead, you get the creativity to take an archetype, which might be like a skirmish type of thing, or a big muscly type of thing, or there's all these archetypes, and you take that archetype and you say, I'm going to convert X creature, say a crocodile, and I'm going to multiply its size by 50, give it fire breathing and wings, and it becomes a dragon. And so you can walk it through. And so any monster, any creature from literature, you can put in because it's possible. A griffin, it's just a lion with an eagle, so those things are all accounted for in the concept of this game. And so the last thing I want to say is, while the system is deep, I wouldn't say that it is so complicated that people should go running for the hills. It's like we've said it's a percentile-based system. Anything that you can think of, you can convert to a percentage really easily. You can just take 5 or add 5 or 10 or whatever a DM wants or thinks is suitable. If someone comes up with something like out of the box that's you know, it's, I would say, very easy to actually implement like weird creative ideas because of the way that this is. I don't know what you think about this, Chepe, and perhaps I'll ask you this question. You've seen a little bit of how this is created. You've perhaps seen D100 games before. Whether you like them or not, it's neither here nor there. But would you say that if someone was to come up with something that a DM wasn't sure how to cope with, perhaps in another system, that it might be easy, hard in this system in comparison? I'd like to actually hear your feedback on that.
Like with this system, it's really easy to impose a dice penalty to just make things harder. Like 30% less chance is a very easy thing to understand for anyone. Because like you have a 15% chance of getting it. And the player's like, okay, roll 15%, and then you do the thing. So from a perspective of creative play, it's very easy to add penalties to anything. I don't know if it's always, if you wanted to model everything, like if you wanted to be scientific about it, I think with how you've done it, it might be a little bit harder because you didn't put everything in calculus. You didn't make everything overly complex. There is some crunch to your system, there's no doubt, but I don't see it as I'll say that it is easy for a lot of GMs. I wouldn't say, I think certain types of people wouldn't get it as much for the simple fact that it is a percentile system. And some people like don't necessarily, some GMs don't like saying, hey, you can do X thing, but now it's really, really hard for you to do it.
Yeah.
Right? And that's kind of the way Mirrorlost deals with creativity, which is, you can do it, it's just really hard for you to do it.
Sure.
Which is just, it's a lower percentage chance.
Well, I mean, in the end, that's a DM's choice. I DM differently to how you DM. We all DM differently. And if someone comes up with an awesome idea and it's a little unlikely and it's just fantastic, we as DMs can go, you know what? You have this skill, or you have this element that you can use, and that is an amazing idea. So let's see it happen and just let it happen for that one time. Or we can say, you know what, yes, but. So that is a DM's prerogative. So yeah, I totally hear you and I agree. It can be daunting, and it can be certainly a system that people don't like. I know a personal friend of mine that was really interested in Mirrorlost was really put out by the fact that she had to roll under a number, and she found it really hard to get her head around that. And some people do. Like, we're all creatures of habit, and we like different things, and that's okay. This game is not going to appeal to everybody. But my hope,
to some people.
my hope is that it'll be robust and interesting enough and creative enough that people will go, you know what, I can do that, and simple enough. While there is crunch, it hopefully with that percentile idea can be something that you're like, okay, we get the concept, so we can create it on our own. And hopefully that will be how it happens. Who knows if it will? That's my hope as a creator, and we'll just have to wait and see if the hopes become reality, or if I was totally delusional. But thank you so much, Chepe, for coming and asking me lots of very interesting and difficult questions. Really appreciate that. Again, everyone, definitely visit Fawn Trodden, Chepe's channel, as there is a lot of very interesting content there, and I personally hope to see more as we go through this year. There's lots of things I'm very excited about that Chepe has in the work. So definitely go over there. And for now, I'm going to leave this here. Thank you again for coming, and hope that everyone enjoyed the chat. Bye for now, and catch you on the flip side.